Thank you, Andrew, and thank you, Steve, and thanks to POMED and the Boll Stiftung for putting this event and the report together. I think POMED is continuing to mature as an important reference point for all of us who are interested in the state of democracy and democracy promotion in the Middle East. And I think Steve's excellent report is another demonstration of that. And I think it will become a standard reference on the Hill and in the Middle East. And I want to congratulate Steve and POMED for putting this together. It's a terrific piece of work. I also want to mention, because I'm going to come back to it, a companion piece that we produced at Freedom House, which parallel the McInerney report is known as the Murphy-Hogle report. Two of my colleagues were principally responsible for a global analysis of the administration's democracy and human rights funding requests to Congress. And it dovetails neatly with what Steve has written and presented here. Let me make a few observations. I'm not sure I would go as far as Steve seems to have in drawing large conclusions about the policies of the Obama administration based on this budget submission. I think now 6 months into the life of this administration, 1/8 of its term having gone by now, I think the democracy promotion policies are still very much up in the air. I think it's a work in progress. I think there has been some movement during these 6 months in what I and many in this room might consider the right direction. The President is finding his voice on these matters, and I think becoming more eloquent and powerful. And what the President of the United States says is a major part of our foreign policy. It's not only important public diplomacy for international audiences, but as I have learned, interestingly, this spring, a lot of people in our own government find out what the policy is by reading the President's public remarks. I mean, I've been in meetings with people at the State Department at pretty medium to high levels and at USAID, and they are poring over the same texts that we are, and that the embassies in town are reading and that foreign governments are reading. Foreign service officers and development officials at AID, they're trying to get their marching orders from the remarks of the President and the Secretary of State. And so these public addresses are very important in ways that we probably hadn't fully appreciated previously. Now, I think Steve is right in the way that he characterized, I think it's still a work in progress, and I think the battles will continue about how the money gets spent and what the President says and who he meets with and what our relations are with countries around the world in this regard. The President began in his inaugural address by speaking to governments, right? In his famous passage about those who unclench their fist, we will reach our hand out to you. I think he was talking to governments. And I think, as Steve has said, I think a large part of the administration's outreach in the world has been to governments. Resetting relationships with Russia, trying to do some things maybe a little differently on Cuba, trying to find a way to talk to Iran. I think these are all good things, and I think the administration is, again, trying to find its way in re-engaging and revisiting what U.S. policy is in a lot of different contexts. And these speeches what we've seen in the speeches is that increasingly the President is beginning to speak to the peoples of countries as well. And he did that to an extent in Cairo. He certainly did that to a greater extent in Moscow, and I think to an even greater extent in Accra recently. So it's a global kind of evolution that's underway. And I would say that my observation is that what has crystallized, I think, the President's appreciation for fundamental democratic principles in this way has been the crises in both Iran and Honduras in the last month. Both election-related controversies about, who shall govern. What is the role of elections and free elections in determining who governs countries, and what role does that play in our relations with those countries? I think that those crises we saw on Iran sort of day by day over 10 days, the President sort of evolving his position a little bit, and in a more abrupt way in the Honduran case when President Zelaya was ousted, he very quickly came to the judgment, the public statement that elections matter even when they elect people that are not friendly to the United States interests. And I think those were important moments in this. Probably more important in galvanizing the President and those around him that they're thinking about these issues than, you know, the long 3-month lead up to the visit to Moscow or to Accra. So it's very much a work in progress, and I think one of the big questions we have about this budget and all these numbers that Steve has put in front of us is, who made this budget? Where did it come from? Okay, it came from the Obama administration, but where? All right. Most of the numbers Steve is talking about are from USAID. There is not one appointment yet at the U.S. Agency for International Development. So who's running AID? Now, you may say, well, the State Department's running it, or the professional employees of AID are running it, but there have been no political appointments made at AID now 6 months into the administration. So is this budget the result of bureaucratic inertia, momentum from the last administration, from last year? There hasn't been any political appointees in place to revisit or change things? Or does this really represent a considered view by the politically empowered people in the administration that this is what they want to do, that they've thought it all through and they want to keep MEPI, they've thought it all through, they want to keep MCC. There's no political appointments at MCC yet either. So in a sense, it's kind of a, I don't know if a zombie budget is the right word, but it's sort of walking forward, but I'm not sure who's animating it. Just today, Mike Posner is having his hearing in front of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee for his nomination to be the Assistant Secretary of State for DRL. So he may get confirmed before the summer recess, but may as well be in the autumn that he'll be installed. So we're very late in the year. We still don't have people that are running these programs. There's nobody appointed yet to run MEPI. So I just wonder whose budget this is, whether it really represents a considered view of the administration. It may well. It may be that the handful of senior people that are in place at the NSC and at the very top of the State Department that oversaw the production of the budget that went forward to Congress really did think it all through.